Supply is the quantity of a service or good that a producer is willing and able to supply onto the market at a given price and at a given period of time. This is a supply curve. And as you can see, it slopes from left to right, upwards, which means that there's a positive relationship between price and the quantity supplied. This means that at lower prices, such as P1, producers are willing to supply less here at Q1, and at higher prices, such as P2, suppliers are willing to produce more at Q2. This means that there is a positive relationship between quantity and price. So as price increases, quantity increases. So the law of supply states that as price increases, suppliers expand their supply, so supply increases. This is the positive relationship between price and quantity supplied. Now let's talk about individual supply. Individual supply is the quantity of a good supplied by one individual firm in a market. However, market supply is the quantity of a good supplied by all the different firms in a market. To represent this on a graph, we're going to use an example and say that there's only two firms in a market. So firm A and firm B. So firm A is willing to supply 10 units at a cost of €10. And firm B is willing to supply 20 units at a cost of €10. You add the individual supplies in a market to get aggregate supply in a market. This is represented on this graph. And it shows us that at €10, the market is willing to supply 15 units of a good. Now we're going to talk about movements and shifts in the supply curve. Movements are caused by a change in price of the good or service. So this can be shown on this supply curve here. At a price of €10, 10 units of a good are produced. However, if the price was to decrease to €5, only 5 units of the good will be produced. We can see this as a decrease in the amount of goods produced. However, if the price was to rise to €15, we would have a rise in the quantity of goods produced to 15 units. This shows us again the positive relationship between the price and the quantity supplied. Shifts in the supply curve, however, are caused by a change in a non-price determinant. So the supply curve can either shift inwards or outwards. An increase in a supply will cause a shift outwards to S1. However, a decrease in supply will cause a shift inwards to S2. we're going to talk about what restricts supply. So there are three factors that restrict supply. The first factor is a minimum market price. So this means that firms can only charge a minimum amount if they want to make profits. This is a cost in this area. It's the cost that it costs firms to produce a certain good. Below this cost, anywhere below P1, firms will be making a loss, and anywhere above P1, firms will be making a profit. The second factor that restricts supply is limited capacity. Certain shops can only hold a certain amount of goods. This is called the stock that they hold, and this is represented in the inelastic line here, which shows us the limited supply and the limited capacity that certain firms can hold. The third factor is fixed supply. This can be seen through the totally inelastic supply curve. Here, at price 1, a quantity of 1 will be supplied. At price 2, a quantity of Q1 will be supplied, and at price 3, a quantity of Q1 will be supplied. This means that supply is fixed, and that no matter if the price increases or decreases, quantity supplied is not going to increase or decrease. An example of this may be a capacity of a stadium for your favourite concert. No matter how much you're willing to pay, the stadium owners cannot increase the seating capacity in the concert. So now we're going to talk about what causes shifts in the supply curve. First and foremost, the change in the price of the good itself causes a shift in the supply curve. Secondly, we have the price of related goods. This may be, for example, substitutes. Secondly, the price of related goods, or substitutes, or alternatives that the firm can produce as an alternative to the goods that they're producing at the moment. This may be a firm that's already producing computers may decide to move to producing tablets as the price of tablets increased, so therefore the supply of tablets is going to increase as well. This can be seen on this supply curve here. So the supply of tablets was here, and then it increased to S1 here. We can also represent the supply of computers on this supply curve. The supply of computers was here at S, however it shifted inwards when the firm decided to produce the alternative product, which was the tablets. Now, the third factor that we're going to talk about is the cost of production. The cost of production can cause both a shift inwards and a shift outwards in the supply curve. An increase in supply may be caused by a decrease in the cost of production. So if the costs of production are to decrease, we're going to have an increase in the quantity supplied. This is because it will become more cheap for the firm to supply goods now that the cost of production has decreased. However, an increase in the cost of production, such as an increase in the cost of raw materials, will cause a decrease in supply. So therefore the supply curve will shift inwards, and this is represented in S2. Now the fourth factor that causes a shift in the supply curve is unforeseen circumstances. And yet again, unforeseen circumstances can cause a shift outwards or a shift inwards, an increase or a decrease in the quantity supplied. In S1 and S2. Unforeseen circumstances, for example, may be a flood, which is an example of bad weather, or lots of sunshine. A flood, for example, may ruin crops and may cause a decrease in the quantity supplied. However, lots of sunshine may cause an increase in the quantity supplied of crops. Now the fifth factor that goes towards shift in the supply curve is the state of technology. We all know that technology is a cost-reducing factor. And technology nowadays can be used to replace human labour in some circumstances. This means that we no longer have to pay employees for jobs that technology can now do, and labour is becoming more specialised. This means that it's becoming cheaper for firms to produce goods and services. This causes an increase in the quantity supplied, as firms will be more encouraged to produce goods and services. Now, the sixth factor in what causes a shift in the supply curve are taxes. And again, taxes and subsidies can either cause an increase or a decrease in supply. If taxes are to increase, it means that there will be a decrease in the quantity supplied, as it will become more expensive for firms to produce their goods and services, which can be seen at S1. And if subsidies are to decrease, so the amount of subsidies that the government is offering to firms, then the supply is going to decrease as well, which can be seen at S1. Now, if the taxes were to decrease, it becomes cheaper for firms to produce goods and services, which means that there's going to be an increase in the quantity supplied. And if the subsidies are to increase, it's going to cause a positive effect on the quantity supplied, and quantity supplied is yet again going to increase. Now, the final factor that influences shifts in the supply curve are the number of sellers in the industry. If there are more sellers in the industry, the quantity supplied is going to be greater. However, if this guy decides to leave the industry, then the quantity supplied is going to decrease, as there'll be less firms producing goods. And that is supply.